Why is this important? Well, while 40% of the world's land is classified as degraded, so native plant species can play a pivotal role in restoring these degraded ecosystems. I'm excited to bring up Dr. Ahmed Al-Hamidi, who is from the NCVC from Saudi Arabia, to give us the opening remarks. Please give him a warm welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good evening, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and friends. As the head of the Department of Research and Innovation at the National Center for Vegetation Cover and Combating Desertification, it is my great honor to welcome you to this side event, Native Plant Species, a tool for restoration of degraded ecosystems, the topic of which is my area of great interest. Today, we come together to explore one of the most promising and sustainable pathways for restoring our planet's degraded landscapes, the use of native plant species. The statistics are sobering. Nearly 40% of the world's land is classified as degraded, threatening biodiversity, threatening food security, threatening climate stability, and human well-being. The drivers of this degradation, deforestation, overgrazing, unsustainable agricultural practices, and urban expansion demand urgent strategic and science-based interventions. Native plant species represent a powerful, underutilized tool in this fight. Unlike non-native or invasive species, native plant species are perfectly adapted to their local conditions. They stabilize soils, enhance water retention, and support biodiversity in ways that are sustainable and cost-effective. Their resilience makes them critical allies as we address the twin crises of land degradation and climate change. This event aligns with global priorities, including the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the Convention of Biological Diversity. By leveraging native plants, restoration efforts can achieve long-term ecological, economic, and social benefits. Today's discussions will focus on the key advantages and challenges of using native species in restoration projects, including their ability to restore complex ecological interactions and enhance ecosystem services, such as carbon sequestration and water filtration. Their cost effectiveness, as they often require fewer inputs like water and fertilizers, and their cultural and economic value, providing opportunities for community engagement and sustainable livelihoods. However, we must also address the barriers that limit the widespread adoption of native plants, including seed availability, propagation knowledge, and competition from invasive species. This event provides an invaluable platform to share best practices and case studies from successful restoration projects, identify research gaps, and prioritize areas for investments, and strengthen partnership among governments, research institutions, NGOs, and local communities to amplify the impact of native plant-based restoration. As we engage in these discussions, let us focus on actionable strategies that can be scaled and adapted across diverse ecosystems and regions. Our collective efforts can help reverse the trend of land degradation and pave the way for ecosystems that are not only restored, but also thriving and resilient. I look forward to the insights, innovations, and collaborations that will emerge from today's dialogue. Thank you for your dedication to this critical issue and for your commitments to building a more sustainable future for our plants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. We appreciate all of your opening remarks and sharing about the importance of these native plant species. Right Now we're going to have three presentations from three different scientists, and then we'll go into panel discussion with some questions and answers from those panelists. So first I'm going to bring up Dr. Mandak, who's a senior researcher at the Mongolian Academy of Sciences, to share about some key examples from Mongolia.
Am I in the right place? Hello, good day. Greetings from Mongolia. Well, my presentation is not about native plants, but I will talk about it in between my slides. I just wanted to present what is the desertification situation in Mongolia now and what we are trying to do. We're all in a learning path, unfortunately a bit behind, but still we hope that together we can build the future. So let's start. In terms of monitoring, Mongolia is doing, legally Mongolia signed that every 5 years it assess its land situation. So in this term, Mongolia using national assessment using 5 different indicators as I listed here. So what we do is we defined 5 drivers or 5 processes which is leading to degradation, and every 2 years, as all the country, we had to report to land degradation to UNCCD. Why I'm pointing this to is the result of these 2 assessments are different. So please do not be shocked if you have visited the UNCCD dashboard with the Mongolian map, because here's the results of the Mongolian land degradation among the 5 different years. We are now hitting the 4th national assessment. I will ask to introduce Mongolia a bit. Mongolia occupies 1.5 million kilometers. It has 3.5 million population. So naturally for per capita, one square kilometers are per capita approximately. We have a boreal taiga forest in the high mountains in the north, and we have an island taiga forest in the Altai mountain, which is quite a problematic and during the last years. About 70% of Mongolia considered as rangelands, of which 60% are mountain rangelands, where we cannot do any agricultural practice and which land are used mostly for livestock. And about 45% of the total land are considered as desert and drylands in the south. So from the 45th degree, we have deserts, temperate deserts, cold deserts, so on. Inner Mongolia comes from here up to this corner. So we are sandwiched between 2 giants, Russia and China. And these 2 giants have quite an impact, as well as we impact in these countries too. So, but considering all the things which happens in the nature, we would say that the drivers of degradation in Mongolia is a human, mostly, even though the climate change is pronounced. We cannot deal with the climate. We are not gods. So we try to analyze our land use policies and come up with the 5, 6 policy gaps. It's more related with the economic policy which we have currently in terms of agricultural and livestock sector. And the 4th is the 4th and 5th is more related with the subsidies and economic policies, which really pushes people to overgraze the land. So when dealing with the land degradation, we first need to come up with the human thing and human issues. Well, consequences of degradation are different, but the most which is really threatening livelihood of local rural population is number of livestock which has suffered from miscarriage. During the spring, after the winter, we have to receive new cubs, but unfortunately level of miscarriage is increasing because of the many different, mainly because of the shortage of grasslands or grazing lands during this harsh period. Since last 10 years, we have a group of people who are trying to link human health and land degradation. To date, we see quite a big increase of cancer and respiratory diseases, exactly in those places where they have a high vulnerability and high vulnerability in the drylands mainly. And again, then GDP, the land degradation is well pronounced. If you see this red is a GDP percent of agriculture and livestock sector in GDP share. And we see the gradual decline of this share. So that means that we have to think about land health. Unfortunately, politicians think differently. So if you see the GDP, the margin of the mining is increasing and the share of the livestock and agriculture sector is decreasing. That's the bad thing in Mongolia. Well, in terms of scientific knowledge sharing, we are running extension centers. To date, we managed to establish 3 extension centers in 3 different ecological situations. So the locations you can see from the map. The first one is located in the center of Mongolia, along the alluvial plains, where we have we have a lot, because of the degradation of natural vegetation, we have increased expansion of sand cover. So here we are testing with the different plant species which can fix the sand, because our capability to grow the nature, reintroduce the natural plant species is not so high. We are mostly working with the shrub and tree species, which is not that good, but at the current level, we see the potentials. The other thing is we are testing with the different varieties, establishment of the shelter belt using native tree species, as well as adaptation of the crops to drought. So to date, we are managed to breed 4 considered nationally suitable breeds of wheat, which is the main crop of Mongolia. And the third one is located in this northern desert, so cold desert region. As you see, it's almost 4 seasons are barren. So we are trying to plant trees to propagate vegetation through barriering wind speed and plant different species. This station is quite new. It's established in 2018 with the support of Chinese Academy of Xinjiang Institute. In terms of sustainable land management technologies, we currently recommending our farmers and livestock herders as much as possible to use 4 different classes of sustainable land management technologies, of which really upscaled one is a grassland enclosures, where the people can can help raise the pasture, but use it in harsh times to feed the livestock. According to the latest statistics, we come up around 200,000 square kilometer area used for enclosure for seasonal fodder security. We have plenty of traditional local knowledge developed since Genghis Khan, maybe. And different mountain systems have different seasonal pasture grazing patterns. And now with the support of the FAO, we are planning, we hope to pitch the government to make this accent on the traditional knowledge and mix the science and tradition a lot. Well, you can read all these things, but in terms of native plant species, it's very critical. And for Mongolian situation, it's, as you see, as you know, we have 4 seasons, and with the overgrazing and with the drought and wet periods, the soil seed bank is really desiccating. That's why we really need these kind of centers which can propagate native plants and this support with the provision of this native plant seeds. And I would say, unfortunately, again, we do not have yet capacity in the science itself to bring all these technologies, and the capacity building again is one of the area where we need to pay attention. I'm really glad that CGIAR, about which I listened and read a lot, is doing some work towards land degradation, neutrality, and restoration, and specifically for focusing on native plant species, because it's not only the key, but also the strategy of the nature to keep itself. So thank you for attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mandak. We will now bring up Dr. Abdul Aziz Nian, who can help address some of your points of concern that you were saying Mongolia would like to grow in, such as more seed banks and more genetic innovation around native plant species. And so Dr. Abdul is from ICARDA. He's the regional coordinator of the Arabian Peninsula, and he is going to show us and share with us more about genetic innovations and native plant species. Please welcome Dr. Abdul.
Okay. This is not the presentation. Yeah, okay, that is it. Okay, I'm talking about impact of grazing on plant community components on the arid and hyper-arid environments. Okay, next. Or shall I do it by myself? The green button. Okay. Improved land management. Come back to diversification. Okay, this is what I'm going to talk about shortly. I'm going to bring some best bet. I'm going to bring about best bet technologies for managing land, vegetation, and rangeland resources, including to prevent and reverse the land degradation. Improved technologies. Background. Work initiated in requests with cooperation with APRP as part of its program evaluation and of native rangeland species. FAO had few projects in the region where they wanted to promote what they call direct seeding. They collect seeds from the wild or from the mother plants fields, they call it, and they come and spread the seed, and the germination become very little or almost zero. So they reach out and come and say they think the problem is in the seed quality, because sometimes they use the communities to go and collect the seed, but these plants are not exposed to selection process. They are very diverse. So even within one flower, you can find several seeds at different levels of maturity. When they cut them and then without drying them properly, the seed get rotten, and then when they distribute them, they don't get any germination. So trying to get a quality seed, when you harvest, dry, process, before you start distributing the seed in the permanent field, you need to test and know what is the level of purity, the level of germination, and the vigor. And that's what we were doing with them. So these are some issues about what is bringing the degradation. I mean, in a dry land where you don't have enough water and you start growing tropical grasses, definitely is ironic. You don't have water, you're using the species which are which are not really water use efficient at all. They are water hunger. Okay, urgent needs for low water use efficiency, native species for restoration, urgent need for known quality of harvested seed stocks for rehabilitation purposes, also urgent need for maintaining rejuvenation capabilities of the rangeland seeds. The challenge is high genetic, physical, and biophysical variability in the seed stock, limited information, natural soil seed bank, and dynamics, lack of appropriate harvesting and post-harvest technologies. These are all challenges, for this. Methodologies we have used, we use some geospatial imagery for forecasting, not very in-depth to be honest. It is just about climate change. Effective community engagement, which is we believe as a key. Quantitative or qualitative data along the gradient of the degraded areas generated, and then seed physiology and data on native species generated also. Seed technology units established in several countries. Okay, under these circumstances, trying to grow crops, definitely it will not work. These plants, these plants, they are such slow growing. If you cultivate them and cut them, they will need another 20, 40 years to grow again. And then you just grow some barley or some wheat, you harvest a very little, and then you have sacrificed the flora on this fragile environment. Okay, you can see firewood, it's spread all over the place. Even people go and pull these perennial plants and go and sell it as firewood. Sometimes they use it for barbecue and so on. You cannot believe this. This is a firewood market in one of these countries. All these shrubs that they pull and trees, they are 20 or 40 years old. And now to regenerate them, you will need even more than that because you don't have water anymore. This is some forecasting, some basic main species, just trying to see how they will be impacted by climate change from now on until 2014. Now you can see, for example, in now Rotha, which is, they call it Salsola vermiculata, very highly palatable. I mean, you can see in this area in 2005, and you say in 2050, what is the forecasting? It is going to shrink to really very minor areas, and rams the same, and so on, across different locations. What is being done now is a lot of trying to rehabilitate, collecting seeds, trying to plant them, I mean, and then transferring these seedlings into the permanent field and start irrigating them for two years with what do you call it? Sometimes they try to do direct seeding also, but using low quality seed. All these things, I mean, in some areas, they succeed, but I mean, the management becomes a main problem. This is just to show the low rate of recovery of seed from these plants. I mean, depending on the month. The highest seed setting that you can be recovered is from January to March, and then it starts declining because of the temperatures and so on. You can also see the flowering and the fruiting also the same during March and May and so on. So community engagement, this is one of the projects that we implemented somewhere in the desert in Syria. This is the community leader. We went there, they had something like 4,000 hectares of land. But they had also huge flock of sheep, because the chiefs there, their power is measured on how many heads of sheep and camel you have. But you can see that the land had nothing at all. And he had thousands of heads, but he doesn't want to sell them because that is going to compromise his prestige. So based on the Rio funding of biodiversity, we had a small grant. We went there and engaged them and started working with them to do whatever is possible. So we had a community engagement discussion with the community at different levels on what interventions we are going to bring. So we had also to go to assess what was there. We have to characterize the site. I mean, the seed bank. What is in the seed bank? That's what we wanted to assess in the beginning. So this was a device we have prepared to take samples and then go and that is from where we take the sample. And then we also went and study the plant population using different what do you call it, different methods. We went to the laboratory. I mean, extracted the seed, identify them, but that was not good enough. We took also the soil sample and put it in trays and put water on them, and we were impressed. You can see this is from barren soil. And by the way, not everything germinated, because more than 50% of the seeds are dormant. So this is, we are going to identify seeds. We let them flower, fruit, and we extract the seed and try to identify them at a species level. Did some analysis of what do you call it. So we found that now if we look at this, the results, percentage of green cover decreased along the grazing gradient. You can see these are different areas, but you can just see that, for example, the protected area has got higher green what do you call it, green cover, but definitely that is expected. These are the gradient. You have, this is protected for many years, closed, no access. This is open, continuously grows. This is rotational grazing, which means that 1 year is open, 1 year is closed. and so forth. And then, but when we go here and try to see there was consistency when we are looking about the diversity, not the areas where you have highest green cover did not have the highest diversity. Sometimes it is even the opposite. Okay, I mean, these were using, we use their quadrates, and this we use, I mean, point intercept, but the same. There was not really a consistent distribution of diversity along the gradient, gradient. See, diversity lowest on the rotation, highest on the open. Under the open areas where the animals are grazing continuously, the diversity was higher. Because, I mean, when the animals start biting from the plants start branching and fruiting. I mean, the utilization is improving the diversity, but definitely rational use. The protected areas, some few species will dominate the whole area, so reducing the diversity. So, I mean, protection does not increase diversity. You need to manage, you need to utilize, but rationally. That is the, what do you call it? Diversity lowest on the driest season. This is from season than to season, because they don't germinate because of water scarcity. Now, perennial seedlings more on the rotation, seed bank less on the open. The perennials. Seed and seedling of annual more on the open than under the rotation. All this just confirming that utilization is a must. Continuous closing is just reducing the diversity and bringing few competitive species dominating the area. So the way to go is what we call grazing management, but it's not closing, it's not protection. We studied also Salsola vermiculata. Many people thought that it was a recalcitrant seed. Seed is divided into two groups. One of them, there is nothing you can do. If you store it for 6 months, it is dead. Like onion, for example, you cannot store it for a long time. That is genetic. Some seeds you can store them for medium time, like 4 years, no problem. Other seeds their longevity is very long. So everybody thought that salsola seed, it was recalcitrant. They die very soon, but that was not true. It was simply they're sensitive to temperature, and desiccation. In this one, for example, we just package them in different packaging material, aluminum and paper, and you can see the differences in decline. The ones which were put in aluminum, they stayed for 2 years continuously without any treatment. When we put them under low temperature, all of them continued as a viable and germinable for 2 years without any additional treatment. So protection increased percentage of green cover, but not richness and diversity. This is a key. Rotation promoted perennials, thus optimized richness and diversity. Because the key to the environment is the perennial. The perennial, they create microenvironments which increase the richness, the number of species per unit area. So we need to bring the perennials, but not because of the perennials, but because we need really to improve the ecosystem as a whole. Open grazing, failing seed setting, disabled vegetables propagation. So grazing management and grazing management and grazing management. Okay, physical seed extraction exaggerated the diversity, but grow out test where you add the water, it minimizes the seed bank size. But so you need both of them, physical seed extraction and grow out test to get the full picture, which is complementarity. Short seed longevity in cell solar controlled by hermetic, not recalcitrant. It's controlled by hermetic, not what do you call it. So by ASEAN gave diversity estimate comparable to a frequent test. These are two statistical methods just to measure what do you call it that we have used. Conclusion: perennial shrubs stand face costs and management issues. Rotational grazing lack large-scale application mechanism to improve. To improve flock size reduction compensated by improved breeds. We need to focus on better animal breeds than the number of livestock. Add inter-season to current intra-season rotational grazing. I mean, in many cases, they close the site for 1 year and open the next year. I think we need to also try to incorporate into it some intra-season, which means between spring and winter. Increase dry land pasture production and technologies to support the grazing. Use of grow out and seed extraction in monitoring and planning. Okay, link shrub stand management to income generation, because I mean, the farmers, they also need some cash. It is not only a green area. So participatory rangeland rehabilitation. This was the site. I mean, 100 hectares of degraded rangelands improved. The community managed the land, the whole project, they managed. Even the guard was from them. Okay, we have also provided them with sanitation facilities. I mean, for their sheep. We provided them also for small unit for processing cheese and storage. Not only because, I mean, just getting the land green is not what you call it. We need really to, the community need to be capacitated. Okay, these are the seed units that we have established, I mean, to promote these things. One in Dubai, one in Oman, one in case A, I mean, and one in Kuwait. I mean, we have now linking research and development. Definitely, we are not only doing the things for the sake of it. I mean, this is you remember this. This is in Al Jawf. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Aziz. No, it's okay. We appreciate all of your comments and experiences from Syria, which I assume the environment is not too far off from Saudi Arabia, and just all the experiments you did with extracting seeds and soils looks really, really cool. Right now, actually, I'm going to bring up all the panelists again. Please take a seat at the front and we'll start our discussion panel. We have some questions for you guys, so please come to the front. There will be one more, but he's coming late. Yeah. Abdul Ali, yes. Okay, so our first question will be to the panelist who is new, who we have not heard from yet, Dr. McDonald Bright Jumbo, who's a senior scientist of crop improvement operations from ICRISAT. Dr. Bright, we wanted to ask you, we know that native plants often face competition from invasive species during restoration. So what strategies or approaches do you recommend for mitigating this challenge?
Well, thank you very much. I think myself, I'm not a very competent person in this field, but I will just try. I think invasive plants, we just had a discussion not a long time ago that most of the times when the soils are disturbed, they open up for other species also to come up and start competing with the plants that we want really to raise. So unfortunately, most of the times the plants that come, which are invasive, usually they also produce some other substances that can be suppressive to the plants, the native plants which are there. So I think for me, the strategy that would be there is that because the native plants which we are trying to establish at that particular time, they will still be very young and also very let's say, not very strong. So we need really to take care of them. So I think once they are established, the frequent monitoring of the fields is very important to check if you have some species which you don't like to be there. And also to see what is the kind of interaction between these new species and the native plants, because that is what is really important. Because if we have some other species which are present, if those species they are not harmful, then they can be good in many cases where we are doing restoration. But if they are producing some other substances which are toxic, then we need really to make sure that we take them out. So I think frequent monitoring as we are taking care of the young plants as they establish is very important. So that's what I would say from that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bright. I want to then turn it back to Dr. Ahmed. If you could give any examples of what you're doing in Saudi Arabia around what is putting in native plant species look like and how you're possibly monitoring those native plant species, as Dr. Bright mentioned, please share any examples and what you guys are working on.
Thank you very much. It's a good question. Yes, in Saudi Arabia now we achieved. The Crown Prince declared the Saudi Green Initiative in March 2021. Until today, we achieved to plant more than 100 million of trees all over the kingdom, mainly using native species. So we're focusing on native species, and even for the whole 10 billion trees, which is targeted by the Saudi Green Initiative, will be based on native species. And you know, as Saudi Arabia is a large country, we have many different terrains and I would say ecosystems as well. So because of this, we have more than 2,300 native species in Saudi Arabia, which is a very rich, I would say, collection of plant species maybe in the region. But we still, of course, as maybe Dr. Abdulaziz mentioned and our colleagues in here, need a proper knowledge how to use them, how to collect them from nature. we still, I mean, till today, even when I tell you about that 100 million trees that we planted, we focus only about in 15 or 20 species only at the moment. We are using the key species to be planted in Saudi Arabia. But we have other 2,000 and maybe more than 200 as well. We need to know a lot about them, and we need to explore their ability and viability to be exploited. So for this, we started also to do or to establish some research center all over the country. So now we have our department, which I am supervising, the Department for Research and Innovation. We have a research, I would say, institution in Al Jouf in the north of Saudi Arabia. This research institution will do the necessary work for the native seeds to be propagated in the right way for the range species, because most of our rangelands lies in the north of Saudi Arabia and the eastern part and some in the middle of Saudi Arabia. And also now we started to establish another research center in the southwest of Saudi Arabia, in my hometown called Al Baha. There is a research center over there. This center will be supervising the forest species. We have forests in the southwest of Saudi Arabia, and most of the biodiversity lies there in these forests because the high mountains with suitable temperature, with much more high, much more, let's say, rainfall over there. So that's our work at the moment. We succeeded to plant more plants, but depends only on a few species, I would say 15 or 20 species. But inshallah, in the future, we'll be depending on more and more species. And it's my pleasure also to mention that my colleague in here, Dr. Ali, he is the head of the plant biodiversity department at our center in CVC. So we are collaborating together, inshallah, to strive to study all the species and understand their viability and how can we harness them in our projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those helpful remarks and very setting remarks for us being here in Saudi Arabia so we can understand the context of the place that we're doing this conference in. I want to then pass the mic next to Dr. Mandak, also focused on your country and region specific. I know that you shared about shelter belt trees and native plant species working in that way to help Mongolia's environment. The microphone. But are there any other particular native species in Mongolia that stand out as models for resilience in harsh climates like yours? And what research is needed to replicate such success in other countries?
Big question. Well, in terms of shelter bed development, we are really not using our native tree species. It's more like introduced tree species based on poplars, different poplar species. In the dryland specifically, it's very interesting that we have only 5% of total plant species which are considered as endemic to Mongolia. And all these 5% of species are more concentrated in the Gobi and the grasslands. So out of it, for reforestation and for combating sand and dust storms, we currently manage to use or introduce tree and shrub species. I don't know how much you have, but it's tamarix, saxaul, and the elaeagnus species. So that's the 3 tree species. And we have one shrub species we are trying to introduce in rangeland restoration. It's a karagana. But you may all know that karagana is, in some environment, it's quite invasive. So we have to be careful and trying to select proper. It's ongoing research, but we're still doing. But we're working with the woody species, but not the grass species. And now I think in terms of rangeland, grasslands, and again with the considering livelihood, we need to go into the grass species quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mandak. Can you pass the microphone down to the end? We're welcoming our last panelist, Dr. Abdulwali Kuladi, and he is from the National Center for Vegetation Cover Development and Combating Desertification, NCVC, and he's an expert of natural plant species. The different colleagues on the panel have explored different ways that native plant species can be introduced, how we can use this to combat desertification, what seed banks look like, what examples in Saudi Arabia and Mongolia and Syria look like. And so maybe could you share some examples of the biggest challenges there are to implement these native species into the environments, and also what policy measures and incentives governments can implement to promote more use of native plant species in large-scale restoration projects. Thank you and welcome.
Bismillah. Sorry, I gave a lecture in green zone. She brought me a speaker. Okay. I think I do have a subject about the endemic of the mountain area of the. Is it available?
Like 5 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, 5
Okay.
minutes. 5 minutes. Not even
That's
less
okay.
than that. Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm talking about this endemism plants, which is that mean endemism, which I mean not endemic, endemism plant. Endemism plant, that's mean divided to 3. Endemic to Saudi Arabia, only confined to Saudi Arabia, only found in Saudi Arabia. Near endemic, found in Saudi Arabia, probably in Yemen or Oman. And regional endemic extend to East Africa, Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania, Kenya, etc., and Somal. There's numbers there. Yeah, sorry, the stand. I'm not going to talk about the objective, but to compare the endemism of southwestern mountains of Saudi Arabia with the endemism of Saudi Arabia. In Saudi Arabia, how many species? Maybe 2,000, now 3,000. After discovering new plants to flora of Saudi Arabia, the number can reach 2,000. Yeah, inshallah. Endemism, 350. Of course, subspecies endemism 19, etc. Total 382. That's endemism plants. Endemic, that's, I mean, with endemic, only found in Saudi Arabia, 53. Near endemic, 156. Found in Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Yemen. Okay. Regional endemic, East Africa and Saudi Arabia. It has a term, Somali Masai region, Afro Mountain region, etc. Okay. Let's move, because quickly. That methodology, I'm not talking to that. I'm not being. That is the area from South Taif to North Asir. We found 470 plants in this region, plant species, okay? In which 5 are endemic to Saudi Arabia. These, the 5 species which are only confined to Saudi Arabia, we call it endemic plant species. In that region, 14 are endemic to the Arabian Peninsula, as you see in the map, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, and Gulf countries, probably. We have 53 plant spread found only in limited geographical range in the world, East Africa and Arabia. That's East Africa region, Sudan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, etc. the most abundant species on these mountain areas, which also easy to germinate and plant them, like Dodonia, Facilia origina. By the way, Facilia origina, the last one, only confined to 3 countries, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and Ethiopia. This Facilia origina forms its own vegetation community on high altitude areas, especially on terraces, neglected terraces, beside the Juniperus procera forest area. The dense plants, mostly grasses, Hyperenias and Caracera, Cyanodendactyl, etc. And also we do have Themenda, Juniperus procera, Hyperenia hirta, etc. These plants, endemic plant species, we said 5 plant species, are combined by the following plant species, mainly the following plant species. When we see Facilia origina and we see also Juniperus procera, that's mean these endemic plant species are found in these communities. I mean, communities dominated by Juniperus procera, communities dominated by Acacia origina, and a grassland dominated by Hyperenia hirta. This is a grassland also found not only forest area, we have a lot of areas covered by grasses, mainly Hyperenia hirta, Themeda trandra, the high altitude region of southwest Saudi Arabia. This is the map showing the distribution of endemic plant species. And also here, the distribution of near endemic plant species. These are the near endemic plant species with their individuals and frequency percentage. All these also found in Yemen, except this, the blue, found also in Oman and Yemen. 13 plant species. Here, highlighting the distribution of regional endemic plant species. That's the regional endemic. The frequency percentage of rare, also we deals with rare plant species. And so we counted few rare plant species in these mountain area. Here showing the high density of individuals in very limited sites between Baljarashi and Hawala. That's in term density. Now in term, that is I think the last slide. High density of plant richness. This is richness, also the same area. So if we said, okay, the important plant area or the hotspot area on this region is that one. It has high density of plant species and high. Thank you very much. Shukran.
Shukran. So would you be able to answer the question that I had? And thank you for your lovely presentation, giving us the background on all these endemic species, on what policy measures or incentives can governments implement to promote the use of more native plant species?
I think the Dr. Ahmed can answer this. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go. This is
How easy and how
to what? To it?
Yeah, how difficult, what are the challenges, and what are the
Challenges for
best
these
ways to implement and using these native species?
to implement them, to use them, utilize them by creating protected areas. All right. Collecting seeds, seedlings, and plant them in nursery. And later on, we can also by creating a botanic garden. So we can collect seeds from that botanical garden. Very, very easy. I mean, it's nice to have also herbarium to collect specimens of these plants, and also beside that information how to collect them, what time, how to propagate these plants, etc. So many activities should be holistic activities.
Thank you very much. And can we bring up the other panelists back, please? Who wanted to pass the mic on to Dr. Aziz on also, thank you, on how can nurseries and seed banks be scaled effectively to meet the demands of large-scale restoration efforts in degraded ecosystems, as we talk not only about just protecting and creating conservation areas for these native seeds, but also scaling up through gene banks and seed banks.
Yes. Well, sorry, we need to put the communities in the center. Look, when you are implementing a project and you exclude the beneficiaries, I don't know when are you going to achieve something? I mean, all these ecosystem restorations, the aim is to capacitate and to protect the welfare of the community and their livestock, and generate income, more income for them, and I mean create a balanced nature exploitation. So I would say we are always talking about agrobiodiversity or genetic diversity or whatever. But for me, those agrobiodiversity conservation, I mean, people split it into ex situ and in situ. I think we have to really focus the in situ conservation while putting the communities in the center of the process. Because this is an ecosystem. And when we are talking about ecosystem and we exclude the communities, definitely we are really excluding the most important component, because the indigenous knowledge, innovation at the end of the day is technology plus knowledge, particularly in this indigenous knowledge. So when we put the communities in the center of the process, I think we have a greater potential of success. The other thing, definitely I will dive to your area. Look, we are talking about 2,000 species, 3,000 species, and so on. But we all know that in the ecology, in each area, we have what we call key species. We need to focus on the key species, and then the others will come. If we go to any area, we have the climax, and we have the medium flora, and then we have the ground flora. Until you have that flora is not protecting the shade-loving species, they will not come. So put the communities in the middle, in the center, and focus on the key species, and then we move forward. Of course, water harvesting and all these other technologies, mulching, grazing management, I think are the basic concepts that we need to really promote. Thank you. I don't want to take you longer.
Thank you very much. That was really, really insightful. And I love that you just said we just need to put the communities at the center and then also focus on the key species. And I think that all people in all regions can take that away. It's a blanketing statement that can work for many, many different environments. I guess I would like to just do a quick lightning round between all the panelists. In 30 seconds, could you give us why should people care about implementing native plant species, and what is the biggest thing we need to do to care more for spreading more native plant species? We can start with you, Dr. Abdul.
Because it is their legacy, their heritage. Our legacy and heritage is native species. If we would like to support our lives, support our again, legacy and heritage, we should go to native species. As it is well adapted, as it is well known for people for a long time. So we don't have to suffer of any difficulties to deal with them. And also, the last word that I can have, we suffer a lot from non-indigenous species, from exotic species, from especially the invasive one of them. So we had a lot now from these invasive species, to the extent that we should say now, go only for native species. This is my last word. Thank you.
Bold statement. Go only for native species. Okay, thank you so much. Who would like to go next?
Well, I mean, I think we need to focus on the native species because they're adapted. I mean, I think the first, the most prominent example, Khrushchev visited the US. They took him to Iowa. He came back and he called the Academy of Agriculture and said, we need to grow maize in Russia, -50. So that created his downfall. Maize is not adapted. It's not adapted. It's not a native. Finish. You cannot grow it here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much. I just want to also to add on what they have already said that the native species, since they are already adapted, the cost of managing them is much lower because they may not be much demanding. Also in terms of plant protection, let's say diseases and the pests, they might be much lower compared to exotic ones because they are not used to the place. And again, also in terms of preference by the communities they are already used to these plants, so they might have special attributes to the communities which they are already well connected with. So it's really important for that. So yeah, I think we need to promote them. Yeah, but also we need to explore the new areas as well, but carefully to make sure that we don't raise this unnecessary competition between the species. Thank you.
Definitely. And to Dr. Aziz's point, we need these native species because otherwise you're having invasive species. And then we haven't talked much about that, but then those species will outcrowd and outcompete all the native species. So that's a negative feedback loop, and we need to put forward a positive feedback loop of native species supporting each other. Yes, Dr. Abdulwali.
A point. Why we don't use native plant species as ornamental trees, for example. People avoiding the native plant species. In Africa, for example, they use Acacia tortilis in street trees, okay? Here, impossible. You can't persuade them to plant acacia because they said, okay, this is a spiny plant, etc. So we use introduce plant species, which turns to be invasive later on, like Professor Ahmed Al-Ghamidi said. That's the challenge, Sarah, how to utilize the native plant species and how to protect them in nature.
Yeah, that's a big question, and that's what we've been trying to solve here this evening. If anyone else has any last thoughts on how we can solve that question, please add in. But Dr. Mandak.
Yeah. The importance of highlighting native species to trying to keep identity of the land in a certain territory. So when advocating native species, I would propose to use 3 words: adaptation, cost effectiveness, and identity. And we really need to keep the land as it is, as it's given by the nature. And the key thing and key to keep it is, of course, the native species. And Mongolia had gone through all these steps of mistakes. And after 30 years, we understand the power of native plants. So I would really address those countries who are not yet started playing with the planting everything. Keep an eye on native species more than introducing anything.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Yes, please.
In this regard, I mean, responding to Dr. Abdulwali question is about how to encourage people to use native species. I would say in the case of Saudi Arabia, we have now many policies. which is recent policies. For example, the national environmental strategy, and also the national strategy for rangeland, the national strategy for forests, and even the high, I would say, also strategy in some extent of the Saudi Green Initiative. All of them, we introduced the concept of using native species. Now we are not encouraging people to, in fact, it's the opposite. We are asking people not to plant any exotic species, especially in the vegetation cover areas, in the mountains, in the coastal areas, in the rangelands. Now, nobody is allowed to plant any exotic species. This is one good, I would say, step from the Saudi side, inshallah.
That is really encouraging to hear. I don't know if many other countries have been implementing things like that, but that is a huge step and an example, and we'll see in the near future the impacts of that, I'm sure. I wanted to open up to the audience if anyone had any pressing questions they'd like to ask the general panel or any specific members. No worries. You can ask them after. If not, let's give our panelists a big round of applause as we bring up Dr. Cargel Masso from the CGIAR Environmental Health and Biodiversity Platform to give some closing remarks. Yeah, panelists can just stay here as we'll be taking a group picture after.
Yeah, thank you very much. For me, the first thing to do, I would like to, how many people are in the room from Saudi Arabia? Huh? For them, don't clap for yourself, but anyone else who is in the room who is not from Saudi Arabia, clap. Then I will tell you the reason. Honestly, I come from Africa, I'm native of Burundi. And I'm staying in W3 Hilton, by Hilton. And whenever we are traveling back to the location here, I see the greens on the road when I'm coming. And I'm impressed. Because when we have the opportunity of the greens, you go in majority of the cities, no single tree you can see. So congratulations for that. Now, the point we made was, how do you make sure that we focus on, I agree with you, Dr. Abdullah Wali, in terms, how do you make sure that we do this with the native species? And one of the things, again, going back to my African continent, people will complain that education is too expensive. Until someone came and say, if you know the cost of no education, then you will understand that education is very cheap. Why I'm giving this example, we are almost in 2024. We can count how many years back and the time we have lost to make sure that we keep that diversity. Aziz, you told us about the great job you have been doing in the region, including really when you see the soil, you can't believe that there is any seed that is left. The condition, we can say that is the most favorable conditions for seeds, but nature is able to keep things for us, and we don't take it seriously. And when you go back and you do the recovery, you see the significant difference we can make. Then when I hear the number again, thank you, really, when I hear the number of trees that have been planted and the objective you have, I have been reading about the Green Initiative for Saudi Arabia, the Green Initiative for Middle East, but you have to visit to be able to see it and to hear from the people. So we encourage you, and for me, I think you need to be part of be very active, not only in the UNCCD environment, but also in the UN CBD, the Convention on Biological Diversity. Because your examples, what you can share with us in terms of the cost of recovering what we have almost lost. because you have to have the patience of Dr. Abdul Aziz to be able to dig seeds that you don't see. Majority of us will give up and say, these things don't exist. You have to believe in witchcraft to be able to go and dig. But when you see, I see the kind of germination you have seen, it's quite amazing. And this calls for really the strong collaboration in terms of partnership. How do we make sure that, yes, we take advantage for what we have, and we also bring the know-how. The example, I do believe today Abdul Aziz has been the ambassador, but there are many people working in the same area. How do we make sure that we really share the capacity? And how do we make sure that the communities are actively involved? You said it, and we say it very often, even at ourselves at CGIAR, we have been criticizing the way we have been doing science before. And say, if you had been doing it involving the communities, the first time we started with the CGIAR, probably we could have made more impact than we have made so far. These are, again, the lessons learned. Really taking the example of what you are doing, and I'm glad that you don't limit it to Saudi Arabia, but you are thinking about the Middle East. You just gave a couple of good examples from Africa, where we seem that life is easy. We still see those things, and we are not making the right efforts to invest and to be able to say them. And I may say something that is not politically correct, but I will take the risk to say it anyhow. For me, when I see the effort, and I can say, you know, you have also been able to build a strong economy, to be able to invest in this recovery and conservation and recovery. And I'm extremely worried for other nations if the worst was to happen and they lose the biodiversity, the cover, the way it has been raised, how they will be able to manage to recover when even today, with all the good conditions they are struggling. Just to show that, for me, I wish you can take it far from Saudi Arabia and take it to the rest of the world in terms of knowledge sharing, experience sharing, and even be able to disclose to us the cost implication to educate us and say, you know what, it's costing us extremely, extremely expensive. And we wish others before us have done it, probably we were going to invest less. But all in all, really, the session was amazing, and thanks for everyone, including our moderator for sure, because discussions becomes interesting when you have really catchy questions to attract everyone in the audience. I didn't ask questions when you invite us for questions because I knew I was going to make these concluding remarks. But honestly, let us build the capacity, involve the communities, making sure that the communities are actively involved in the action, but also share the experience. I like the cross-regional learning. Share your experience, educate us in terms of the cost implication, but also the beauty of doing it. I know it's getting almost time to wrap up, so let me hand over back the microphone to the moderator. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Cargel. I could only learn so much from the best moderator around that Lee Winowicki said and gave to Cargel yesterday. And as he says at the end of all of his events that he moderates, we'll be taking a family photo so that the panelists can remember who the amazing audience was and the audience can remember who their panelist was. So if you're willing and able to, everyone rise up and please come to the front and we'll take a photo together and then we'll be dismissed. But thank you for